Good morning. Welcome to the Wednesday Winners Circle and our March session. I can't tell you how excited I am today for our speaker. We have an unbelievable opportunity to listen to someone who goes around the state and talks to young people about making great decisions. Let's make sure that we're sitting up straight, we have great eye contact, and there should be some time towards the end for some questions and answers. So let's make sure that we have our curious minds ready to look to see how we can grow and become better people after this session. So it's with that I'm going to introduce Shreya to introduce our speaker. Shreya?
Mr. Paul Walton graduated from the Detroit College of Law in June of 1991. He worked in the felony trial division and was promoted to the position of Major Crimes Prosecutor in 1996. While in circuit court, he tried numerous jury trials, including murder and other complex litigation cases. After serving as a Major Crimes Prosecutor, he was appointed to his current assignment as Chief Assistant Prosecutor. Mr. Walton is a popular public speaker and has lectured on many topics about law, trials, and good decision-making. Let's give Mr. Paul Walton an East Hills welcome.
Morning. Thank you for that introduction. My name is Paul Walton. I am a prosecutor in Oakland County. Everyone know what a prosecutor does?
Yep.
No, okay. A prosecutor represents the people of the state of Michigan in criminal cases. So what we do is we go into court and we advocate to hold someone accountable. Now, how many people think that a prosecutor's job is to get convictions? Great. I'm glad you don't think that's our job. We are one of the few attorneys that's actually talked about in the Constitution. Our job as a prosecutor is to do justice. And sometimes justice means saying to the police, look, I think we got the wrong guy. Let's try harder. Or, you know, this isn't the right case to go to a jury to or argue to the court. So what we do is we go into court and we advocate. And everyone know what it means to advocate? Yeah. Okay. Anyone here ever take debate or on a debate team? Come on. Show of hands. Okay, great. So when you are in debate, sometimes you're given a side, right? And you're told that you have to argue this side. And you have someone else that is going to oppose your point of view and argue against you, right? That's basically what a prosecutor does, is that we're advocating for a certain position, usually for the victim, for someone that has been hurt, and we are advocating that the person that hurt them be held accountable. Now, what that means is I'm your attorney. I'm not paid by a law firm. You can't go out and hire me. It means that if you are a victim of the crime, that I will stand in court and advocate for you. Now, what types of crimes do you think we do? Do you think we do drunk driving cases? No. Yes, we do. You think we do shoplifting cases? Yes. Yeah, we do shoplifting. Do you think we do assaultive crimes? People that hit each other? Yeah, of course. And we do murder cases, bank robbery, armed robbery, all different types of cases. Anything that is criminal under Michigan law, we will go in and we can argue. Now, let me take a step back. How many of you have been the new kid in school before? Okay. It stinks, doesn't it? Okay. You know, I was the new kid in school 13 different times. 13 different times I was the new kid. Because my dad's job, when I was growing up, he was an FBI agent. So what we did is we moved a lot. So when I grew up, I started in a very, very small town in Wisconsin called Chippewa Falls, Wisconsin. And it's just outside of Minnesota. And I lived there for about 10 minutes. And then my dad moved. And by the time we got done moving, I lived in 9 different states, went to 13 different schools, and went to 2 colleges, 3 high schools, and by the time I graduated law school, I felt that I had a great deal of exposure to different cultures, different people, different ideas, different ways of thinking. You know, I had the great fortune when I was like 5, 6 years old, living on an American Indian reservation in Gallup, New Mexico. You know where Gallup, New Mexico is? Okay. It is a really, really small town outside of Albuquerque, which is on the plateaus. Anyone ever go see some old westerns on TV? That's where they used to film them all. So I got a chance to live there, and I got a chance to live in New York City, Washington, D.C., Florida, Pittsburgh, Denver, all across the country. And what was great about that is I got to see how different people got to approach problems and reach out to find solutions. So what I want to talk to you is about choices and the choices that you're going to have to make. Now, how many of you are 8th graders? Okay, so you're going to be starting high school next year, right? How many 7th graders? And the rest are 6th?
6th, 5th, and 4th.
6th, 5th, and 4th. Okay, great. All right. So, how many of you are thinking right now that what you want to do is you want to become a lawyer? Anyone? A couple hands? Okay. All right. And I'm only using that because I'm most familiar with that. But in order to become a lawyer, what do you have to do?
Law school.
Okay, so you got to go to law school. In order to go to law school, do you have to go somewhere before that?
High school.
College. And before you go to college, where do you have to go before that?
High school.
High school. And before you go to high school, where do you got to go before that?
Elementary school.
Middle school. Okay. So if you're thinking of that right now, and actually when I decided I want to be a lawyer, I was in 4th grade. So I kind of mapped out this idea, this is what I wanted to do. So what you're going to have to think about is the choices that you are making right now can have a big impact on where you end up. And I mean that in this way. When I was growing up, we didn't have social media. We didn't have cell phones. We didn't have computers. We didn't have a lot of the stuff that you have in your pockets or your hands right now. So in a lot of ways, it was a little easier. For you guys, there are going to be a lot of challenges that are put before you. Okay, when you woke up today to come to school, how many of you decided what you were going to wear? Okay, so you made the choice. You decided what shirt you're going to put on, what shoes you're going to put on, and how you're going to look today, correct? All right, so you made the choice of how you want to appear in school, how you want to interact with people. What I'm going to ask you to start doing is thinking about another way that you behave. How many of you have some type of, are online, have social media, text, share messages, things like that? Just about everyone? Okay. How are you behaving online? Because that's just as important. And what I mean by that is this, is let's say I talked to one young lady who wants to be a prosecutor, and who is, okay, all right, so you want to be a prosecutor. So the idea is that you want to go to school and eventually get to this point. Let me tell you one thing that I do for the prosecutor's office. One thing that I do for the prosecutor's office is I get to interview people. I get to decide to hire people. And one way that I do that is they give me a little packet of information about themselves, and it's called a resume, or a curriculum vitae in some cases. And what they do is they hand me this information, and what do you think the first thing I do before I decide whether we're going to interview someone? Google their name. I type their name in a search engine, and I look them up. And what I'm looking for is, did they write anything in law school? Are they on social media? Is there anything that's been bad written about them? And it is sometimes kind of scary what people will put out about themselves on social media. So, anyone use Snapchat? Okay. How old are you guys? You shouldn't be using Snapchat just yet. Okay? How many of you have parents use Facebook? Okay. All right. One of the things that I do is I will Google their name, and sometimes I will go on their social media pages. And I will see things that cause me a lot of concern. They are doing things that look like they may be hurting someone else, or saying mean things about someone else, or engaging in in some type of activity that shows that, you know, I wouldn't want them representing me in court. And it may not be anything that's illegal, but it may be stuff that shows me that it's high risk. And one day I figured, you know, am I being too mean? Should I really be taking this approach? So I actually picked up the phone and I called this group in Washington, D.C. called the Bureau of Labor Statistics. And I wanted employment law or employment statistics about how many employers go out there and will begin a search for someone to work for them by simply typing a name in a search engine. You know what I found out? 94% of all employers begin to look for an employee, someone to work for them, by simply typing a name into a search engine. And what that does for me is this. I immediately create two piles. I create a pile where people I've gone on, I don't see anything bad about them, I see good things about them, so these are people I want to talk to. Or there's another pile where people have gone on social media and have made bad decisions, and it goes in that pile. And this pile never gets a call. And that's your reality now. Those are some of the challenges that you guys are going to be facing in the real near future. There is going to be a lot of pressure on you from other classmates, other students, situations, to say or do things online that you wouldn't do in a classroom. You wouldn't do face-to-face with someone. But somehow you think it's okay because, you know what? It's online. It's going to disappear. It's going to go off my computer. I'm going to use Snapchat. No one's ever going to see it again. And what I want to kind of warn you about is this. Anytime you type a message, anytime you take a picture, anytime you decide to hit send, that picture, that image, that thought that you shared goes out to the world. It really does go out to the world. Because once it's out there, you're never getting it back, and someone else has it. And they have it maybe forever. And I can think of case after case after case where I look at, if someone just didn't hit send, I wouldn't be involved in their life. Involved in life as a prosecutor. And what I'm going to ask you to do is, next time you sit down and send a message out, send an image out, send a thought out, I'm not saying not to, do yourself a favor and really look at it. Really read what you're saying. And then make the decision, you know, is this message this important? Am I being mean? Am I hurting myself? And if the answer to any of those questions is yes, don't hit send. Because that's a life choice that it is amazing how it can come back and hurt you later on. Okay, now I'm going to talk to you a little bit about some of the pressures that I know you're going to get in the near future. And that's this. As you start getting older, and anyone have a girlfriend, boyfriend, anything? Okay. As you start getting older, you're going to get a lot of pressure from someone that you think cares about you to send pictures. And sometimes they're going to ask you to do things that you don't want to do. And what I'm going to suggest to you is you don't ever send those pictures. You know, someone may say, do me a favor, send me a picture without you wearing a shirt. And I know this is a tough topic to talk about, but this is really important for you guys to think about right now. If you decide to take that picture and send that picture, do you think the person that gets that picture on the other side is only going to look at it themselves? No, they're going to share it. And that picture is going to be out there forever. So what I don't want to see is you guys getting pressured into a situation where you make a decision that you think is funny or cute, or you know, you're trying to win over a boy or a girl at the time, that could have some real world consequences for you later on. So the real part of this little discussion is this. before you hit send, what are you giving up? That's one of the things that I go out to every school and I talk about, is the idea of, do you want to give this type of control of your life, as hard as you're working right now, to someone else? And the answer should be no. And besides, does anyone know anyone that works at Snapchat? There's some pretty creepy people there. And at Facebook and at other places too. So when you send your photograph to your friend, it's going through that company first. And you gotta think of the idea of what's going on is when you're sending your thoughts out, you always have someone else out there that's looking at them. It's not simply going to the person that you want it to. So think about that when you're making these decisions. You guys are gonna work really hard. You've got a lot of tests to take. You've got a lot of exams to study for. You've got a lot of extracurricular activities to engage in. And you're gonna work very, very hard. And because you're here, I know that you're gonna be our future leaders. And what I don't wanna see is that somehow a decision that you make today because you thought it would be cute or funny or you were mad at someone is going to affect your opportunities or limit you in any way. Now, let me get back to a little bit about the idea of what it means to be a prosecutor. I gave you some oversight or some ideas. Now, what types of cases do you think that we deal with? Yes, sir?
Criminal.
Criminal, okay. Absolutely, criminal. Now, what type of criminal? Do you think we do a murder case every now and then?
Yeah.
Okay. What do you think it takes to prosecute a murder case? Okay. Evidence, great. And evidence comes in all different types. It comes from someone that takes a witness stand that I ask questions of. It can take the form of DNA, blood, saliva, skin cells. It can take the form of pictures, I heard someone say. It can be a lot of different things depending on the facts or evidence. And it can also include things like looking at someone's computer. Now, when we're prosecuting a case, what we're trying to do is take 12 citizens who have known nothing about the case and show why someone is guilty of the crime. You know what our standard is in a criminal case? Beyond a reasonable doubt. It's the highest criminal standard. Now, in order to do that, what's the great thing about my job is I get exposed to a lot of different things. I have gotten to meet with mechanics or, engineers, project engineers from GM, Ford, Cadillac, because some of the murder cases I've been involved in have been because of automobiles. So we have had to know the mechanics of the motor vehicle. The next week, I've had to meet with scientists from the Michigan State Police because we're doing things like DNA analysis, and we're doing something called mitochondrial DNA as opposed to autosomal DNA. Anyone remember biology? What mitochondria is? The powerhouse of the cell. And nucleated DNA? The center. What's the difference between autosomal DNA and mitochondrial DNA? Mitochondrial DNA only follows your mother's paternal lines. Autosomal DNA includes both your mom and your dad's DNA. So you can see that in some cases, the type of DNA that we use can be different. And the great thing is, because of my occupation, I got to get exposed to all these different things. I know more about the rear braking system of a Cadillac STR than I ever thought I'd need to know because I needed that information for a murder case. So if you're contemplating maybe getting a job in a prosecutor's office or doing something like a lawyer, you never stop learning. And every day is a challenge. To do some of the cases that I have to do, I've got to learn a lot about computers. One case that I got to work on with the FBI a couple years ago, it was people that were sharing photographs that they shouldn't have been sharing. Had to do with the cascading effect of opening an email account and how it creates a cascade. And that was important because sometimes when you open an account or you click on a page, you get a lot of pop-ups that you didn't ask for. You know that, right? Okay. Now, if you didn't ask for the pop-up, what effect that would have on a criminal charge. So, you know, you get a lot of exposed to a lot of different things. So, the idea of being a lawyer, specifically a prosecutor, is simply this. It is constant learning. And you've got to keep an open mind. You've got to keep an open mind to what the public is thinking, changes in the criminal justice system, and equally important, changes in what's going on in our society. From simple things like mechanics of a motor vehicle, all the way up to what are some of the psychological thoughts now of things like people that are criminally insane. Having done insanity cases before, it's very interesting sitting down with some of the psychologists and psychiatrists and talking to them about different facets of their education and their thought process. So it's a great opportunity to be exposed to a lot, and there's a lot of jobs out there like that. But the idea is simply this: are you willing to learn? Are you willing to expose yourself to things that you've never had to think of before? And are you willing to take the time to sit down and think about it? Because you really kind of owe it to yourself and in my case, the people that I'm representing. Now, with that, we got just a few minutes left. Does anyone have any questions about things that we do? Yes, sir.
Should I also use like fingerprints?
Yeah, we do use fingerprints. And in fact, we have gotten so good at fingerprints in some cases that we can actually take the oil and skin cells off a fingerprint and not only use it for a fingerprint, but DNA analysis. It's called LCDNA, low count DNA. So we've actually gotten to the point where we're not only simply using the structure, the rich structure of fingerprints to say, aha, that was your thumb that made that print, to the point where we can now say, it's your skin cells in that fingerprint. So there's been a lot of advances in that way. Yes, ma'am.
What happens if you represent someone that you think did the crime or wasn't innocent as you thought they were?
If they weren't guilty of the crime?
If they were guilty of the crime, but you were representing them.
Well, I represent the people, so I'm not representing an individual. But if you're asking me what defense attorneys do when they're representing someone and they know they're guilty, under our system, our criminal justice system, it's simple. Everyone that is guilty has a right to great representation, zealous representation. So there are defense attorneys out there who are representing their client, and they may have a belief that their client is guilty, but the defendant still has a right to be represented. And he or she can say to me, prove that I'm guilty. You have to prove I'm guilty. Doesn't matter what I know or what I think. You have to prove that I'm guilty. And that's our system. So it happens all the time on a daily basis. Yes, sir.
Was it difficult being a new kid in school a lot of times?
Yep. Yes, it was. Yes, it was. But you know, and the thing is, being the new kid in the school is, it also has its advantages because you get to meet a lot of different people from all over the world. Yes, ma'am.
What are some problems that you faced going through law school?
Problems I faced going through law school. Okay, well, this is going to get a little personal, so I apologize for that. When I was in college, actually, when I was in grade school in Michigan, the first time we lived in Michigan, I was diagnosed with dyslexia. Everyone know what dyslexia is?
Yeah.
Okay, that is you flip oftentimes words or things around. So one of the challenges that I faced going through middle school, high school, college, and then law school was I was never a real fast reader. And to this day, I'm not a fast reader. So what that meant is that I had to spend more time in the books. That was my biggest challenge. But the advantage is oftentimes people that have mild cases of dyslexia or dyslexia are better organizers. We have a tendency to sit down, break down information, and organize it a lot better. So that's a case where I got to take a disadvantage and use it as an advantage. Yes, ma'am.
You said you moved 13 different times. Does that mean you moved every single year of
I'm not 26.
Well, no, like,
But I appreciate the compliment.
Besides law school and maybe college, like your elementary.
Yeah. There was 1 year where I was in 3 different high schools.
Oh, wow.
I was in Springfield High School in Springfield, Illinois, Chippewa Falls High School in Chippewa Falls, Wisconsin, and Basking Ridge High School in Basking Ridge, New Jersey. That was all within a 6-month period of time.
Wow. Wow.
Yes, sir.
Have you ever found somebody to be guilty and then they spent time in jail and they weren't actually guilty?
No, unfortunately, I have not. I have been involved in cases where, during my preparation to the case, I have doubted their guilt. I have then decided that because I wasn't convinced that we were going to dismiss the charges. So I've had that situation before. And as the person in charge of litigation, that's all criminal cases with the Oakland County Prosecutor's Office, there have been many cases that I've sat down with the trial lawyers from my office, other prosecutors, and said, I don't think this is the right person, so let's dismiss the charges. But I haven't gotten someone that has been convicted who has challenged it. We really work very, very hard to make sure that doesn't happen. Yes, ma'am.
Is there anyone that you found that's like, you know they're guilty and know who they are, but they've gotten away?
Yes, yes. Part of being a prosecutor is it's not what I think. I've done a lot of cases where I am absolutely convinced that someone committed a crime. It is always a matter of what type of evidence I can bring into court. So if admissible evidence. So if I know someone's guilty, or I think someone's guilty, but the only thing I have is a suggestion, not someone that can come in and say, aha, she did it, or DNA that points out that they did it. And I don't have evidence that's going to meet my burden. What's my burden? Beyond a reasonable doubt, the highest standard. If I don't have that evidence, it doesn't matter what I think. It's always what I can prove. Yes, sir.
Have you ever been accused of a crime?
No. No, I have not been accused of a crime. Yes, sir.
So, of all the lawyers that you've interacted with, what are some common characteristics of the most successful ones? Like, what do you see that they're doing that they might have in common?
There are different types of lawyers, but most of the lawyers that I deal with on a daily basis are trial lawyers. These are lawyers that go into court and they advocate. And I think one of the best assets to any trial lawyer is someone that knows their subject matter, can ask intelligent questions about it, or very focused questions, but best of all is a good listener. Because my job as a prosecutor isn't, I know I'm talking here, my job as a prosecutor isn't to tell the jury, it's to get evidence from the witness and have the witness tell the jury. So you've really got to be a good listener. And then you take those questions or those answers, and that becomes your evidence. Yes, ma'am.
One more question.
Did you ever have family members that disapproved of what you chose to be, like, for your career?
Well, in one way, my father was wasn't upset, but when I was graduating law school, I had to make a choice. I was hired by the FBI, and I was hired by the Oakland County Prosecutor's Office. And I called him and I said, I am not going into the FBI, which was his career choice. I'm going to become a prosecutor. And it wasn't that he disapproved, he just thought I was going to go on one track over another. Okay.
How about a round of applause for Mr. Walton? Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Thank you. Wow, some great takeaways. I loved in the beginning about the power of great decision making, and then this idea of always being a learner. If you think about the traits of a successful lawyer, being a great listener and knowing your subject matter, it's the same recipe for success in school as well. Let's go to our classrooms, to our extracurricular activities, and remind ourselves of the power of great decision making. Go out and have a great day, and we'll see you next month.